And I know 3 weeks ago now, we were doing the first part of Matthew. Now we're at the second part, the latter half. And we missed a lot of that while I was gone, but I didn't want to just leave it open-ended. I wanted to catch up and do the last half of Matthew this week. We'll jump into Mark next week, which we're already, if you're reading along with us, and again, that's another thing I pray that you're doing. If you haven't done yet, get the YouVersion app, read along with us. It is rich. There's so much there. We're reading through the New Testament this year. We did the whole Bible last year. We'll keep getting shorter and shorter. 3 or 4 years from now, we'll just have a verse. So it'll be, we're getting a little more succinct this year. We're just doing the New Testament. And so we are through Matthew. You'll find it as we go through the Gospels, a lot of the same story has appeared. There's a little bit of different emphasis of each one. Matthew, this latter half, the first half was kind of a little bit more about the, who is this Jesus? The first half of Matthew is a little bit more about who is he? That was that revelatory stage. And this latter half is, at first it was like, do you have Jesus? You got Jesus. Now it's like, you got Jesus, so now what? So you have that revelation. What do you do with it? Because there are a lot of people that come to the revelation that at least Jesus was a real person, or even that Jesus has power and authority. Remember, the demons knew who he was. They even knew that he had power and authority. But then what do we do with it? So you get Jesus, you understand, but what do you do with the application of that understanding? That's kind of what the second half of this Matthew, the latter half, 17 to 28, covers. It covers a lot, but that's a big part of it. So we had the revelation. Now we have the response. So we had the confession. You come to the place of confessing. Okay, I understand that he's Jesus. Now what do we do with that? In fact, in Matthew 16, was that great revelation that Peter had. You'll see that in each of the Gospels. Who do people say I am? And Peter is the one who confesses, you are the Messiah. You are, and he recognizes that. He says, God revealed that to you, Peter. You didn't even get that on your own. You have a revelation there. Of course, we know just a few verses later, he stumbles over himself and says, Jesus says, I'm going to have to go and die. And he says, no, that's not going to happen. Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Same guy. Revelation from another source. So you can have a great revelation from God himself by the power of the Holy Spirit, but the other source is still talking to you, okay? So what do we do with that revelation? So I want to look at that a little bit. We're going to start with 17. We're going to take it in 4 movements. This first one is seeing Jesus clearly. Seeing Jesus clearly. This is all about vision. Once you have this, you see Jesus, you recognize. What do you recognize about? And so we're going to look at 17. This one is Matthew 17, 4 through 5. We'll start there. Peter said to Jesus, same guy again, by the way, Lord, it's good. And by the way, background on this is the transfiguration. This is when Jesus, they go to the mountain. He just takes the 3 guys with him and says, hey, let's go up there. Moses and Elijah appear. Jesus in radiant glory. So they are in awe. Peter says, Lord, it's good we're here. If you wish, I'll make 3 tents. Here's one for you. There'll be one for Moses. There'll be one for Elijah. And he's got this great revelation. And then he gets interrupted, and it's by a powerful voice. He was still speaking. Behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. You ever been interrupted by God when you had a great idea? Hey, God, this is what we're going to do. Let's do this, and it would be a great thing. And I kind of, as I was reading through this, I'm thinking of our modern day applications of what we do so many times. We do it in churches. It's like we have this great revelation from God, a great moment that happens, and then we want to commemorate it. And I get it. Peter's like, hey, I have this great idea. What if, look, let's make some tents. I mean, everyone's going to come see this. This is really cool. You guys can hang out there. We're going to open a coffee shop. We'll call it Hebrews. It's like we have these revelations like, hey, let's make this thing happen. And God just interrupts. He's like, okay, listen. You don't need a good idea. You need a God idea. Listen to him. Listen to him. You're coming up with in your own thoughts like, okay, if that's good, then this would be really good. And how many times I think of myself like God gives me great revelation towards something and I have a learning experience and then I want to add something to it. And this is kind of what Peter has done a few different times, and he says, stop. The cloud, a bright cloud, God thunders through the cloud and says, hush, listen to him. Like, oh, wow, that gets your attention. And God has a way of wanting us to pay attention to what Jesus is saying in the midst of whatever great revelation. And that doesn't sound like a bad idea. It's like, yeah, that would probably be, you could probably sell some tickets to that, Come see the shiny men with great power, And there he wanted to do that. He said, no, let's not do that. There's this idea that we have sometimes when a move of God happens that we want to add ourselves to it, to make the most of it. It makes me think of when I worked with Life Outreach International for several years, the James Robinson. We had a television program, and so it generated income. It cost a lot of money to be on TV, but then it also was the avenue by which we could take care of and generate funds for mission organizations. So each year at that time, we were generating about $75 million that would go into mission programs around the world, which was feeding people, or drilling water wells. We were putting shoes on children. And as a part of that, sometimes to get that word out, we would send people over. I would get to go at different times. And we would go over to those places, to our life centers, or where we were feeding people, or rescuing human trafficking. There was all kinds of things that we were doing. They still are. And so people would call in and have these great ideas. And it was always, and one of my roles was I would talk to a lot of individuals. We were very hands-on, talking to individual supporters and spending time with them. But we'd have someone have this great idea. They would call and say, I've got this wonderful idea. I have this product, whatever it might be. And here's what we can do. If you guys will put me on TV with my product, this thing is a great product. And we'll sell millions of dollars. And I'll give a portion of that back to the ministry. And, you're thinking, oh, well, seems like a good idea. That's a whole different model of going after, and there were people that would do that. And you're probably familiar with things like Tom's Shoes, where they generate money, and there are all these cause marketing is what it becomes. We want to support people in Africa. So if you buy our $2 shoes for $75, we'll send $2 to Africa. And we're like, what happens to the other $71? Oh, it's a profit organization. See, there is something, even though, yes, there's a little bit going on there, what they're not understanding is, and what that they're saying is, I will become a multimillionaire and I'll give you some of the millions. But I'll ride on your back in order to do it. And there's not a recognition, even as they're saying it, that that's what they're saying. That there's going to be this great profit from it. And I think that's sometimes what we do with the Lord. Hey, let's set up this great tent. Let's get everybody coming here. All the recognition will come. That's always what they want with the Messiah. When he shows up, he's like, you be this great king and champion. Yes, we want the Messiah. Because if you are great and I get to be your close friend, then I get to benefit from that. But Jesus in his messiahship was not what they were intending. There was stuff that he was telling them on a regular basis. He's like, I didn't come to do things that way, not your way. Even though that sounds like a good idea, it's not a God idea, and you really need to pay attention to his voice. And God says, stop talking. Listen to him. Peter's like, okay. We get to see that a lot from Peter, and he's done it to me a few times. Not a lot. Not every day, or every hour at least. Anyway, not only when I'm awake, okay? So what happens sometimes is we come up with our grand plans, and they're good ideas. And again, I would say it's kind of like working on my research for leadership. One of the things that happens a lot is there's a big mantra for we need leaders, we need leaders. Everyone could be a leader, which is bunk, because if everyone's a leader, then no one's following, but it's a whole other conversation. But there is this kind of thing is like just be. You can be whatever you want to. You need to rise to your greatest thing. It's like, no, stop. Listen to him. Listen to him. And ask and see where he's directing you. All right, moving on. So there were these two guys. There were Joe and Charlie, good friends. And they both loved NFL football. And it was during the football season. The problem is that the service they normally went to, especially when they did communion, would go into the beginning. They might miss the whole first quarter of football. Well, Joe already made up his mind. He's like, I'm not going to church on Sundays during football season because I don't want to miss any of it. Charlie was on the fence. He's like, oh man, I still want to go to church, but I don't know. It's a hard decision. He said, well, you're going to miss the first part of it. Sunday rolls around, football game's going, and Joe's there watching. Charlie shows up right at kickoff. He said, oh, did you decide not to go to church? He said, yeah. He said, yeah, it just took me a while. I said, yeah, thought you'd have been here for pregame if you're not going. He said, sometimes it's hard to decide. I wasn't sure how to, so I decided to flip a coin. Joe says, it doesn't take long to flip a coin. Charlie said, well, it does if you flip it 100 times. So sometimes we look for formulas, we look for ways, we kind of come up with plans to try to make Jesus fit what we want to do. And I think we have to be very careful to make sure that we're listening to what he has to say. So if we really want to hear God, we have to trust him. Hearing his voice is so much more than just getting a good idea or looking for his general direction, figuring out a formula, and then going that way. He's speaking to us on a regular basis. I can't emphasize enough the fact that prayer is not just a one-way communication. It's not sending up to God just your requests and hoping. He's not a deistic, far off. He is here with us. There in prayer you have adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication, intercession. There are all kinds of different prayer that we put up. I think sometimes we just think of supplication, which is, God, I have some needs. Can you supply this? Or maybe we're praying for someone else and just, let's intercede. And maybe we're again, maybe asking for their supply and still. If you look at the Lord's Prayer and other places, there's adoration. It's just adoring God. Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. And we just camp there and just thank him on a regular basis, which is another. Thanksgiving. Confession. I know that this is, remember what Paul said? He's like, there's stuff I know I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not. And there's stuff I am supposed to be doing, and I'm not doing that. And I am doing the wrong things, and what's wrong with me? And confession is an ongoing, all through the Bible. There's a regular process of confessing, and it's not to go into a booth to talk to one man. It is to speak directly with the God who supplies all of our needs according to his riches and glory. Okay, that was a side sermon, and it ain't in my notes. So anyway, the second movement is about choosing the kingdom over comfort. Choosing the kingdom over comfort. This is Matthew 19 and 20. That's where most of this comes from. So we move from this vision of seeing who the Lord is, or seeing what his plan may be as he's unfolding it. So what are we going to do with that? And we see him clearly. He begins to address our attachments. In these two chapters, he talks to a few different ones about things that they're attached to. So let's read Matthew 19, 16, and then 21 to 22. Behold, a man came up to him saying, Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life? Jesus said to him, if you'd be perfect, go sell what you possess, give it to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. When the young man heard this, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. We call this sometimes the story of the rich young ruler. He is called that. He is healthy, wealthy, wise, young, powerful. Evidently, he seems to be a pretty good guy. Later on, the disciples are like, hey, just a question here. That guy's really, he's kind of got it all together. And so what's going on here? I mean, Jesus is trying to get to a root with him of what's important to him. He already kind of knows it. And the problem with him is the possessions or the things that he believes that he owns. When it comes down to it, Jesus is not against you having stuff. But what the problem is that stuff now possesses the man. See, the problem with what we own and ownership and our idea of what we have is we become protected of that. And that becomes so much our own identity that if we lose the stuff, we feel like we lose our ownership, our own self, if you will. And it's not wrong to have those feelings, but what do you do with them? And the reason I say it's not wrong to have those feelings, if we go back to and think of the Garden of Gethsemane incident where Jesus is praying to the Lord, he recognizes that in his self, there is a different preference for the way things are going. Now, for us, it's usually, it's, should I go here? Should I go there? With Jesus, it's dying on the cross with the worst death known to humanity and to take the weight of sin of the entire world of eternity on him. And he says, I would not prefer it in my flesh, in my humanity to take that. If there is a different way, could we consider that? And he asked a few different times for that. And the Lord, the answer then is that he realizes, and he doesn't even say that the Lord answers him, but he has a revelation. He says, not my will, but yours be done. So there's this super powerful thing going on, like giving up of your will. This is what Jesus is asking here, and it's this honestly, our stuff, the thing we think we own, are not as major as what Jesus was facing in Gethsemane. But even in whatever little bit we have, you never watch a 2-year-old. You don't have to teach a 2-year-old how to be selfish. It comes natural. You have little children play together, and you hear this a lot. Mine. It was that cartoon where they had the seagulls. Mine, 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 The irony of watching little children play with a toy is they'll fight over a toy. It'll be like battle royale to the death until one of them wins. And then another toy comes in the room. And they're like, now I don't need that one anymore. It's like, let's move on. It was never about the toy. It's about mine, It's about the losing of stuff. How many things have you owned throughout life that you thought were really important that you sold at a garage sale later or are out there in a landfill somewhere that seemed like they were pretty important at the time? Old Christmas presents, all kinds of stuff. It just moves on. Electronics change. Jesus challenges him, just give up all that's yours that you think you own and come follow him, and he can't do it because he has great possessions. He was owned by the things that he thought that he owned. There's another story that happens in Matthew 20 that's also about selfish desire, and it hits a little bit differently. But Matthew 20, 10 to 11 and 15 to 16, I'll give you pieces of the story. It's a little longer. But now when those who were hired first came, and he's telling a story about a man who was a wealthy man. He hired a bunch of people. They thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius, a day's wage. So he had hired people throughout the day. If you remember this story, he hires people at the beginning of the day. He hires them a little later in the day, and he hires them all the way up to the very end of the day. And he tells each one of them as they come to work, I'll give you a day's wage to come work. And they're very happy, like, oh, good. I need work, so yes. They get to the end of the day, and in verse 11, and on receiving, they grumbled at the master of the house. They grumbled because they were like, wait a minute, we've been here all day. And you're paying these people that came at the end of the day the same wage you paid us? And he says, am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first and the first will be last. The point of this, there's a lot that goes to it, but there is within us this demand for God to be fair, if you will. And he said, look, I'm going to pay you a day's wage for a day's work. And we gladly say, wow, that's awesome. Thank you. You're gracious. And then people come late. And now we're upset because we believe there's injustice. Why should they get a full day's wage when they I don't really feel like they did anything. And I think a lot of times we are measuring ourselves against one another. And the point of it is that we're looking to God, and what little we can see, like, they don't deserve that. I should get more. Now it's back to my stuff again. What do I get? And the reality of this in God's economy is, what does it really matter in eternity? If we realize, like Paul did when he had that little banter about himself, he says, who will deliver me from this body of death? And then he has a revelation. I'm only here by the grace of God. And later on in another book, he's like, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. I'm in a win-win situation. So whatever I gain of stuff on this world or whatever goes, none of it matters because I don't own any of it. He's the one who gives, and according to his supply, and I can rest in that. Even as stuff comes and goes, I can be content. And he has that in little or much. I've had great and I've had little, and I've learned to be content, whether in prison or just talking to whatever comes along. I've learned to be content. And Paul talks of that, and that's one of the things that Jesus is getting across. It's one of the things that Matthew's capturing about the life of Jesus, and one of the things that we run into. He summarizes by saying, like, the first are going to be last. He said, the greatest among you are those that serve. To be a servant is a great thing to do, and our world doesn't sound like, I don't know that, serving, we don't give a great credence to those that are on the serving end. We really kind of want to be served. We're looking for, again, a level of comfort at times. This is what we think sometimes when we come to the Lord, is that things get better and they become more comfortable. He said, well, maybe I will have you be a servant, maybe the ones who is helping others along the way. It's funny, I think about like sports teams and how often we go onto a football field or whatever it may be, any kind of sport, and there are people on both sides praying that their team would win. I guess the one that prays hardest wins. I mean, it's really funny how we do that, because we think of, in the economy of things in those moments, that would be something that's important. And, at the end of to pray that everyone stays healthy. There are things you can pray in a match like that or something. You hope that everybody makes it through. But at the same time, here's the deal. At the end of the day, and nobody, and I say it a lot, no one gets out of here alive. Part of the goal is that you give up this, what Paul says is a body of death, this mortal flesh, so that you can go on to eternity. He said, that's it. It's like, I realize for me to live as Christ and die as gain. So I don't get focused on the stuff that's in this world, or even focus only on the relationships now, because God's created us in eternally so that we can come back together. There's so much more to that, but that's the second one. Choosing the kingdom over comfort, we have to focus on kingdom instead of our own comfort. Movement 3 is embracing the least. This is kind of where he kind of moves. He's like, the last shall be first. There are those that you think of as lesser among you, and I want to elevate that. I want to care for that, and I want to use you as servants to the advantage of others in that. You find some of this in Matthew 21. Let's read Matthew 21, 14 and 15. The blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying out in the temple, Hosanna, son of David, they were indignant. This is what's happening at a time where the triumphal entry. Jesus shows up on Palm Sunday, and they're throwing down the palms and stuff. And we're just a few weeks away from that, commemorating that and pronouncing this is the Messiah. There's this great revelation that this is, man, finally we believe this is the guy. He rides through. It's the only time he ever comes through the main gate. He rides on a donkey just like a king would. This is a clear pronouncement that he is that Messiah, and they are supercharged. They're looking for that champion. They're like, this is it. And they are excited because they believe that if they can get on his side, then this great king that's come to conquer for them the Roman Empire would give them back authority and power. And if they're close to him, then they also would get in on part of that. There's so much going on in their minds. This is it. He's the Messiah. See, part of the revelation for us is that we want Jesus to be the Messiah, to win our battles, to fight our fights, that we get to come out on the other side, that our team wins, and he says, I'm not inviting you to a place where your desires are fulfilled, but that your desires would change to match mine. That we would be like him in Gethsemane, not my will, but yours be done. No, stop. Don't come up with all these own ideas. Listen to him. We see this over and over in Matthew, and it's building now. And he's he's closer to the cross. And he came in that day fully knowing where he was going. They're expecting something very different in the Messiah than one who would come and give his life the way that he was about to. They were calling out for this triumphal entry, and we need to always keep in mind that when Jesus shows up in our lives, we're not there just to cheer him on to win our battles, but to lean in and say, what do you have to say? What are your plans? And as opposed to my plans, the opposition grows to Jesus during that week. He goes to the temple, the Sanhedrin, the lawgivers, or Sadducees, Pharisees are all so mad at Jesus. It's building. He knows it's coming, and it's going the wrong direction in so many ways. And that opposition comes because he is not fulfilling the direction that they are anticipating. And now he said, focus on the least of these and be a servant. And most people don't really want to hear that part a lot of times. Matthew 25 is where it goes. This is one of the most powerful sections in the Bible. I'm going to read a portion of it, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you, a stranger, and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it for one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. This is a section when he said that when he returns, the kingdom, there will be this pronouncement that there are some that did not do for me, and there's some that did do for me. And you've seen me, he says over and over again. And so the people are even asking, when did we see you? Over and over. When did we see you? When did we see you? Now, how many of us want to see Jesus? I mean, I think a lot of us were thinking, I would really like to see Jesus. And he's going to say that when he returns, you did see me. And they ask over, when did we see you? When did we see you? And he comes back and he says, well, whenever you did something, you visited someone in prison, you gave food, you gave water. Whenever you did to the least of these, you did it for me. And there's I actually have a picture. I think I put it in there. Do I have a picture? Yeah. So this is Life Outreach International. This happens to be Tammy Trent, who had gone on some of the the different outings with Life Outreach. She's at a feeding center here and feeding some people in Africa. This picture was probably taken by Janice Myers. A lot of people know Janice. But I was able to go on several of these trips. I couldn't find old pictures. I got them way somewhere. But to go and help. And here's the thing about that in this picture, and I've mentioned this before in other settings, but a lot of times we look at something like this where we see someone helping, and it's a powerful image to be Christ-like. Whenever I do it to one of the least of these, we're thinking, wow, and he says, give a cup of cold water in my name and do all. But the parable, or not the parable, but what he says, like when he comes again, what it says is whenever you did it for one of the least of these, you saw me. So the people in this picture that represent Jesus more accurately are those being fed. So we always think, or sometimes we get hung up in the fact that we want to be the hero of the story. And he again, and does this over and over again, he throws everything on its head. He said, when you did it for one of the least of me, like when did we see you hungry? When did we see you in prison? When did we see you thirsty? He said, when you did it one of the least of these, you did it to me. And we are not the hero of the story. The least are very important. So when we're on the lookout for those in great need, and by the way, sometimes you are the person in great need, and the accuser will tell you, don't ask, don't reach out, don't. But you may be giving somebody else the opportunity to see you as Jesus because you're the one that needs help at a time. And to allow someone to help you can be Christ-like as well. Just a thought. You ever heard of a pecking order? You've probably heard of it. And a lot of you had chickens and you've seen it at work. There was a Norwegian zoologist who actually discovered in 1921, did this study among chickens. If you've been around chickens a lot, I'm sorry. I mean, no, chickens are an interesting animal, to say the least. But they peck each other. And in the pecking order, and we still use that as an analogy, is something that was actually discovered, that there's a pecking order from the strongest down to the weakest in chickens. It helps to determine who gets food first, who gets water. It's rites for mating rituals. Everything else, it's like there is a pecking order. There is a first and there is a last and a least. And in society, sometimes we do the same thing. The one who gets to go first is the one who has the most. We want to own more so that we have a higher authority, so we get to go through more doors. We have this sense of a pecking order. And there were people that wanted to invite Jesus to the higher tables, to be part of that pecking order, to go ahead and raise him up. They wanted him to be that Messiah and give him all the accolades so that they could benefit by being close to him. And he just wouldn't do it. I'm going to eat with sinners and tax collectors. I'm going to go where I'm not supposed to go. I'm going to touch lepers. I'm not going to have a formula the way that you think there are formulas. I'm not going to heal the same way every time. I'm not going to do the things that you think. I'm not going to follow your plan. Even when it seems like a good idea, I'm going to do things differently. And you're going to have to stay in constant relationship with Jesus to know what he's doing at that moment. He did not heal. There were times that he came into a place, into a town, he healed everyone in the town. There were times that he stopped doing it. He came by, and we talked about that. He goes through the sheep gate over and over again. He goes by the pool of Bethesda, where all of the lame people are, the ones that are trying to be healed. And there's only one time that we know that he stops, and there's only one guy he talks to. When the place is so crowded, he can't even get in the water. He heals on occasion and differently because he's not following a formula. His goal was not to stop all poverty in the world. He said, the poor are with you always. And that's going to be something. There's a sense in which all of us need healing. We certainly do. Everyone is in the whole, all of creation is in a process of loss. It's all under a curse. It's all going a certain direction. But there's a Redeemer who's going to redeem all things. A new heaven, a new earth, a new body. There is an eternity that's so far outdistanced what's going on now that it couldn't even be measured. Like a twinkling of an eye is this life. You know, a twinkling of an eye is like, it's faster than a blink of an eye. If you look at that construct, it's when your eye, if you ever look at someone, you see a twinkle in their eye, what that is, it's like seeing the sun glint off a mirror because your eye is just being a mirror. It's the speed of light. It's quick. It's really quick. The older I get, the quicker it gets. And you feel it coming, but being okay with that, to have an eternal perspective is a lot of what Matthew is getting to, and a lot of what Jesus is like. Look, you have opportunity, and it is to be with those that probably are in the wrong pecking order, you know, the ones that are the least, the ones that are hungry, thirsty, that are in prison, need visiting, and this is what we are up against over and over again. Movement 4 is about the cross and the resurrection. This is where it's all going towards, okay? And then the Great Commission. This last part, the cross, the resurrection, and the commission, is the culmination that we get, and this is the entire Easter package. This is the entire resurrection week coming together. Matthew 26 through 28, each one of those. And I'm going to read a snippet from each a few different places. We'll read Matthew 26, 39. And going a little further, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." This is what I was referring to a moment ago in the Garden of Gethsemane, and this is Jesus there. I think it's so appropriate and not a mistake that he's back in a garden. Remember, the whole fall of humanity happens in a garden. And it is in this place of focusing attention with the Lord that Jesus is back now. And he goes and he prays 3 times, and he says, if we could have this cup pass, that would be my preference, but not my will, but yours be done. It's okay to talk to the Lord about what your preferences are. But it's not, what we shouldn't do is to go with a demand like Peter did early on. He says, "Oh Lord, no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to die." And he's like, "Stop it. Stop it with your plans. It sounds good. It's like, we can't have the Messiah dying. That doesn't fit the MO of how things go down. Let me educate you a little bit, Lord, on how things should go." How often do we do that? We look to the Lord and we're like, I don't really get it. The chances of you understanding the Lord are 0. They're just, it's not going to happen. You're going to hit situations and you're going to say, this is where I thought this was going, and it didn't go there. It feels like you're not on my side, Lord. You know, our team was supposed to win. I certainly wasn't supposed to be injured, you know, whatever it might be. And the Lord he has a better understanding than we do ultimately. This is what comes to even in Jesus himself in the Garden of Gethsemane. Not my will, but yours be done. If his will in his humanity was different than the will of God the Father, and he recognized that in his own humanity, then the chances of our will being in line are not there. It has to be given by faith, given by trust. We have to go to the least of these, go to his plan on a regular basis. A little further down in Matthew 28, 5 and 6, the angels said to the women, they show up, by the way, this is the beginning of the resurrection time. He died in 27. It's all about his death. They take him, they crucify him after Gethsemane. And now, on that Sunday morning, the ladies show up at the tomb. The angel is sitting there and says to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know you seek Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here, for he has risen. As he said, come, see the place where he lay." There is this revelation that we have that sometimes things don't go. I mean, can you imagine that full process of having lived with Jesus all that time. He's going to be the Messiah, and I'm going to gain from it. We're expecting this all happen. And even think about Peter. Peter's like, I'll die for you, Jesus. And he says, well, you're going to deny me. And it even told Peter a little bit beforehand. He said, do you have any swords? And he said, we got some here. And he said, oh, that's good. That's all you need. It was like a setup. Like, why would he tell Peter to get a sword? A guy shows up, and he cuts off Malchus's ear, one of the guards there. And Jesus is like, nope, that's not. He needs him to see, even Peter at that moment, my plans are different than your plans, and I don't want you to do that. It seems like the right thing to fight and die for a cause, and I'm willing to die for it. He's like, I don't even know how to die for you, because I said I was willing to die for you. Now this, you won't let me. On his own terms, he puts the guy's ear back on, which I was like, wow, that's nice. But he's like, I guess I don't fight for you now. And then it says Peter follows from a distance. He's watching. He's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The confusion that the plans that I had were not the plans of God. Sometimes that happens. I would say most of the time. So faith and trust in Jesus goes beyond the stuff that's going on. In the midst of whatever may be. And here's the deal. Sometimes there may be just things that come out that are such incredible blessings that you don't expect. When you change your economy in your mind to the things of Jesus, you see things differently. So you're like Peter and Paul and some of the disciples, where you're singing in prison. That doesn't seem right. Wrongfully accused, beaten, thrown off cliffs. When you have the economy in your mind of eternity, it changes your perspective. He was not where they expected. He said, come here, look, you can come see her for yourself. Go. We rolled the stone away. The angel's sitting there, come in here, see it. Because they're not expecting to see him gone. They think that the resurrection or the death was the end of it. There's stuff that will happen in your life that feels like lost, you can't get by. I cannot imagine the ones that were there, like, we've been walking with this Messiah for, I can't believe it went this way. This is not how it was supposed to go. Now they think it's over. So they're like, we're just going to go in and see his body. He's not here. See, there's an expectation you weren't expecting either. Oh, wait a minute. But I thought they had no idea what resurrection was. Even though he told them along the line, they thought death wins, but it didn't. So now he's like, okay, this is a game changer. And now his analogy that they thought of having resurrection life, wow, oh, you mean, oh, resurrection life. So here he is. And in Matthew 28, 18 to 20, after he gathers them back together, he says, okay, here's what we're going to do with this. And Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. So that kind of covers it. All authority on heaven and earth. I don't know what else it would be there. That's a lot. And then he says, okay, then he gives the commission, go therefore, because all authority has been given to me, go therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teach them to observe all that I've commanded, and behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. So it begins with the fact that, listen, the whole reason that this works is all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, you can go. I'm giving you authority to be representatives of me. He's been talking to them about being ambassadors all along the way. Therefore, go. Make disciples, you baptize, go to all the nations. The only reason you have the ability to do so is that I've given all authority. And by the way, I will be with you wherever you go. And how long? To the end of the age. That's pretty good. I'm with you. And if I'm with you, what can be against you? Do you fear what might happen? They might disagree, The least of these, what if they don't want me to feed them or give them something to drink, or they don't acknowledge it. I mean, not everyone who needs help will receive help. But he says, go to them, go to the least, go to those. And I tell you, some that need Jesus the most are the ones who think that they have the most. You go to the least, and sometimes they actually receive it really well, but go, make disciples, give the good news, spread the word to everyone, and I will be with you. This is my plan. The cross, the resurrection, and now this great commission. I like the word commission, if you think of it. It is a mission with. It is a mission in submission to God. He has a mission, which, if we had a long fuse, we could light it. We could have the song going. It's mission impossible. You cannot do this. You are not able. But it is not your mission. It's a co-mission. And your co-pilot, pretty good. Because, lo, I am with you always. And, oh, by the way, not only is he always with us, but he has all authority, and in heaven and on earth. So, yeah. In other words, everywhere. His great authority. And this is why you can go. Therefore, go. You know what the therefore is when you see it in Scripture or anywhere, actually? It tells you what the previous thing was there for. Because of his authority, therefore go. You can go because I have authority and I am with you. So it is not even on our own strength that we go, and it doesn't seem impossible, or it seems impossible, not possible with us. And he says, listen, I've got a mission, and I'm sending you, and it's a co-mission. We go together in this deal. And sometimes it's like, I wonder if you're running out there and you feel like the Lord's not with you. It'd be right to examine, Lord, have you sent me on this mission? Is it part of it? Am I just trying to set up a coffee shop in the mountain, or is this really from you? The beauty of it is he has given us that ability to have conversation with him. So the ways that we connect with God, we read his word and know what his voice sounds like. We have a regular conversation with him. We talk with other people that also believe in Jesus. And we say, is this what God is saying? And he will bring people to confer with us. I've heard some of the craziest stuff that people have come as a pastor and on staffs and stuff through the year and they'll come and they'll say, I think the Lord's telling me to do this. And very quickly you can go, that is not God. Sometimes you may not know, and you can pray with them. And sometimes there are things that are absolutely a great idea on paper. I've had plenty of those. And my prayer towards something sometimes is like, this would be a really cool ministry. Lord, I'm praying towards that because I know that could be something great. Do you want me to do it? And if you don't, please close the doors. And they close. And you're like, okay, that was not God. Okay, we're okay with that. And Charlotte and I, we looked back over our ministry journey through the years, and it's really cool in the rearview mirror. You can look back and go, and it dawned on me one time. A lot of times I put together resumes and set out. When I knew God was moving, it's like, we're going to do something different right now. And there were time after time that people were like, oh, that would be great. And they wanted me to come in and do an interview. And then, the craziest, miraculous ways that things did not happen. And there's so many things that have not happened through the years. And they were all good, in hindsight. And every time God has led us into another ministry or anything that we've done, it's just been him laying something and just like, it's like whatever accolades, whatever I can put together, or however I try to put together on paper. And it's just when we've just backed up, prayed about it, and said, God, is this you or not? And it could look crazy on paper. I mean, for us coming to Brady, Texas, like, that's crazy on paper. I think still people, I tell people, are going, you're doing what? Like, no, we love it. This is what God has for us. And we feel like this is exactly what God is doing in this moment. I pray that we can all continue to reach out to the Lord, have a regular conversation, and look to him as the author and finisher of life. If he is the one who knew you before you were born and knows you in all eternity, and certainly he knows what you need today. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him. He will direct your path. There are so many scriptures that tell us that he's on our side. The great accuser is always going to come and say, is he really? Is he really? Same old stuff from the garden in the beginning. And even when Jesus goes in the wilderness, when Jesus is in Gethsemane, he's continuing to whisper. And so even Jesus went through temptation, but did not follow through with that. He leaned to the Lord. He asked for what direction he needed at that time. There were over and over again, stuff would come along and they would say, Jesus, do this, would you do that? And a lot of times it wasn't yes or no. He would say, it's not my time. Man, that is the whole first half of John. It's not yet time. It's not yet time. It's not yet time. You know, through the years when I've prayed, sometimes I'm like, Lord, I need to know, should I do this, yes or no? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you yes or no. I'm going to tell you wait. I'm like, nope, I want a yes or no. And the Lord has a beautiful way of directing us. Lean into him. Have a regular conversation. See, that's the thing that is necessary with the Lord in direction, is you actually have to have a relationship. You can't autopilot. You know, it's like having a subscription service for something. You know, like you want a certain channel on your TV and you put it on auto pay, and you just don't ever want to have to worry about it again. You just want to turn on the TV and the channel is there, you know. And that's what we do sometimes with the Lord. It's like, hey, I did the baptism thing. This ought to go smoothly now. And do I actually have to communicate with you? It's like, I want a relationship. Jesus didn't do the healing the same way every time, because he wants us to have a relationship with him where we come together and we say, what do you want to do today? And that's what we're going towards. This is Matthew, and I want to conclude with what we've looked at this last books here, 17 to 28. It shows us what life looks like after we truly get Jesus. So see Jesus clearly and live humbly. It's all about getting that vision for him. The next part, choose the kingdom over comfort. Follow the true king, not just your expectations. And live in resurrection power and mission. We do have the king of all the universe who's on our side, and that's good news. Amen? Let's pray.